one of the things about a very broad job description like that, about being a presence on the property and so on, is that it gives a lot of leeway. So essentially I saw this as an opportunity to really create a position out of this very broad job description. So I began to think, well, what does it mean to be a presence? And part of this is, my background as an English major and all the other things that I've done. And so I started to think about, well, being a presence, what does that mean? So I thought about, well, what do I wear as a ranger? And then the foundation gave me a shirt. That's basically it. It said, Conservation Foundation on it. So I, imagined how a ranger might look, and got myself, khaki shorts and boots and all this sort of thing. And because I love to walk, what I would do is I would, park my truck in an area, and I would literally spend an hour or two just sort of walking in that area, finding out where all the roads went, finding out where all the deer trails went, seeing what was out there. And the more I started doing that, I had some field guides. I started looking at the plants and said, oh, what's this? So I began to learn all the plants that were out here. Began to get curious about the other life forms that are out here, the insects, the different birds, that sort of thing. So it became a self-education process. And out of all that, the learning that I was doing, there were two things that happened. I saw that there were a bunch of natural walking trails out here. Usually old Jeep trails that had sort of grown in or that hadn't grown in, that if they did grow in, I could go through with my loppers, trim out one of the wheel ruts, and it'd be a perfect place to walk. So I started that, and right now there are probably 20 miles of walking paths that are all around here. And this year the foundation just published a Middle Moors map. This is another project that I've been working on for a while. And we got a grant from the Garden Club. So all of these trails now, all these hiking trails that are out here in the Middle Moors, or most of them, because there are a couple that I didn't put on there, are now on this map. So that was one thing that I did. The trail at Squam Swamp, I don't know if you've been in there, but there's an interpretive self-guided trail in there. I think it was my second year as ranger. I was walking back in there, got totally lost, ended up over on Squam Road somehow, managed to find my way back over to the Wawinnet Road. And my first thought was, my God, what an incredible place this is. It's like no other place on Nantucket. Big trees, swamps, marshes. I mean, there's so much in there. And I thought, boy, this would make a great interpretive trail. So I got Jim Lentowski and Bob McGrath, took them out. This was like a year or two later. Took them out. We walked in there, explained what I thought, thought this would make a good trail. And I guess it was a year or two later, one of the foundation members came up with a grant, some grant money. And that was the start of the Squam Swamp Interpretive Trail. So we laid that out, and then a couple of years ago, Karen Beatty, the staff ecologist, or she's now director of science and stewardship at the foundation, she and I were in with topo maps and compass and surveyor tape. We basically tripled the length of that trail, put in a whole bunch of new markers and stuff. It's such a wonderful trail in there. Now there's a brochure. There are 56 points in there. Every summer, between 30 and 40 different species of birds, just right here at my bird feeders.
Martha, you got to get in here. Come here.
Yeah, there are about 30 miles of these single-lane sand roads that go all through this area, the Middle Moors. Very often people will ask where the term moors comes from, or what the moors are in terms of an ecosystem. And it's really more a literary term It doesn't really identify a specific, specific ecosystem. It generally refers to this very rolling, kind of hilly terrain that has bogs and marshes and swamps.
So do you see a lot of people out here?
Not
They
many.
don't, when you consider how many people come to Nantucket, how many people really actually come out to the moors?
Very few. It's amazing. I know most of the regulars that come out, people that come out to walk their dogs, they're mountain bikers and all that sort of thing. But other than that, it's pretty rare that you see people just kind of coming out here. The swallows are, of course, getting ready to migrate, so they're filling up. Each one of those swallows eats its own weight in insects every day.
Wow. That's a lot. So now, is this the routine?
This is the routine. Basically what I do every morning, I start out, and I usually try and go a different way every day, so it's not like driving to work or something where you just sort of check out. And my responsibilities, I cover about 5,500 acres of property that the foundation owns here in the Middle Moors. My official title is Middle Moors Ranger, and it's all this area between the Pulpus and Milestone roads. This is Milestone Cranberry Bog coming up on the left here. And you can see some of the different management techniques that the foundation's been using. This is an area that we've burned. We've done these prescribed burns.
Yeah.
There are, whenever we do a burn, there are like 46 different things that we're looking for. Things like, the wind speed, the wind direction.
First of all, why do you do it anyway? What's the whole idea about it?
The whole idea behind this, of the burning and the mowing that we're doing on the island, is to try and restore some of the sandplain grassland habitat that's out here. Now here on Nantucket we have 90% of the global population of this sandplain grassland habitat. It's a very unique habitat, and the reason the habitat is here is because of 200 years of intensive sheep grazing. And so it's a very unique habitat to the extent that the Nature Conservancy about 8 or 9 years ago designated Nantucket one of its last great places. These are ecosystems that they felt are under threat. And the threat here is the scrub oak. You look out in the area that hasn't been burned or mowed, and you see what happens is the scrub oak forms a dense thicket. It just if you look on the ground, you maybe find 5 or 6 different species of plants underneath all the scrub oak. In the areas where we've been burning and mowing, the sandplain grassland, you'll find probably 30 different species of plants, predominantly the grasses and reeds and sedges and that sort of thing. So what we're trying to do is to preserve at least part of this very rare, globally rare habitat that we have on Nantucket, the sandplain grassland. And that's the whole reason for...
Well, wouldn't the sheep have eaten all those plants as well, though? They'd eat everything.
They eat everything.
But
in fact,
they kept the scrub oak down because they ate everything.
Right, exactly. They kept the scrub oak down. All the woody brush they kept down because they would, they would eat the seedlings as they would come up. And woody growth, the growing tips are in the ends of the branches, whereas with the grasses and the sedges and so on, they grow from rhizomes under the ground. So you burn an area, and within 2 weeks, if we do a spring burn, within 2 weeks, it's like a bright lime green because everything is coming back again because it's coming from the rhizomes under the ground. And the woody plants are kept at bay. And that's the whole reason for as I say, 200 years of sheep grazing. It's estimated that in 1850 there were over 15,000 sheep just roaming Nantucket at will. We have numerous descriptions and even some photographs from the late the 1880s and the 1890s showing this whole area out here. Not a single tree. Because of that 6,000 years of native or Indian habitation, Fran Cartoonan calls them the ancient proprietors. Because of that 6,000 years, we know that they would burn over areas for a number of reasons. You burn over an area, it stimulates the berry growth. 2 or 3 years after a burn, the huckleberry, the blueberry, and so on, profuse. We also know that they burned over large areas to attract the migrating waterfowl, the grasses and so on. So we know a fair amount from the Indian culture that was here for 6,000 years that they had burned over many of these large areas throughout the island. And one of the other things, being an island, you know, there's a constant salt spray. The reason that there are no big trees except in the so-called hidden forests out here is because the constant salt spray that's out here on the island keeps the woody, you know, the woody plants down. They just, you know, they just can't thrive, except in these low depressions of the glacial moraine, the whole northeast part of the island. And so in these areas, you know, if you fly over them, it looks like it's all level, but it's in those areas that are 40 or 50 feet below the surrounding hilltops, you get these big trees.